Most men chase affection. They try to impress. They try to please. They think being adored is the goal. But what if I told you the real power doesn't come from being adored? It comes from being worshipped. Not with gifts, not with words, not even with love, but through psychological gravity, the kind that bends her emotions around you without her realizing why. Because there's a moment, silent and invisible, when a woman shifts from liking a man to needing him. Not for his looks, not for his charm, but for the emotional control he represents. You see, Machiavelli understood something most men still don't. He knew that the deepest influence doesn't come from attention. It comes from emotional authority. And the Machiavellian man doesn't win her heart. He restructures it. He doesn't fight for her affection. He makes her fight for his validation, and that subtle reversal changes everything. Because when she realizes that your attention isn't automatic, that your affection isn't guaranteed, that your time has weight, her mind begins to orbit you. Not out of love, but out of fascination. And that's the first secret. The moment you stop seeking her approval, you stop being one of many, and start becoming the center of her emotional world. This video isn't about manipulation. It's about understanding structure, the psychological architecture of desire. In the next few minutes, you'll discover the dark psychological trick that rewires the way she feels about you. A formula drawn from Machiavelli's most ruthless insights into human emotion. You'll learn how to move from being a man she likes to a man she can't forget. A man whose silence feels louder than other men's compliments. A man who doesn't beg for loyalty, but commands it without asking. Because once you understand how to trigger that worship response, you'll never chase attention again. You'll become the gravity she can't escape. The quiet storm that pulls her in deeper every time she tries to walk away. So listen closely, because after this, you won't just see attraction differently. You'll see power differently. Every human mind craves what feels rare. But what's rare is not what's hard to find. It's what's hard to possess. And that's where most men lose power. They think attraction grows from giving more time, more words, more affection. But in truth, the more available you are, the more invisible you become. Because when a woman knows she can have your attention whenever she wants, she stops valuing it. She stops feeling it. You become safe, predictable, background noise. But the Machiavellian man, he never lets his presence become routine. He gives just enough to awaken her emotions, then pulls away before she can label him. That's controlled scarcity, the art of making your energy feel expensive. And it's not about games or ghosting. It's about psychological pacing. When she texts, you don't rush to reply. When she compliments you, you don't overreact. When she tries to test your interest, you don't explain, you observe. You move slow, not out of indifference, but out of control. Because the man who responds too fast is signaling dependency. The man who responds when he decides to signals value. And here's the twist most men never see coming. Scarcity isn't about absence. It's about uncertainty. Uncertainty activates the same neural circuits as addiction. It releases dopamine, the chemical of pursuit, not satisfaction. It keeps her checking, guessing, hoping, replaying every small interaction. You become the emotional slot machine she can't stop pulling the lever on. That's why some women can't stop thinking about a man who vanished weeks ago. Not because of what he gave her, but because he interrupted her pattern. He left her story open-ended. And the female mind is designed to close loops, to seek emotional completion. But when you disappear mid-sentence, when you withhold just enough to make her wonder, you become the missing piece her mind keeps searching for. That's the hidden edge of controlled scarcity. You train her emotions to do the chasing. Every unanswered text, every silent pause, every calm delay, it's not rejection. It's tension. And tension is what keeps her addicted. Because once she realizes that your energy can't be summoned on command, it gains a new meaning. It becomes sacred. And sacred energy, once felt, is never forgotten. So remember this: the man who gives too much loses mystery. The man who gives too little loses trust. But the man who controls when he gives owns the game. Humans aren't wired to respond to consistency. We respond to contrast. And when it comes to attraction, Nothing hooks the mind faster than emotional highs and lows. Most men are predictable. They give warmth, they give attention, they give reassurance constantly. And after a while, that warmth feels normal, safe, forgettable. But contrast, the sudden shift between warmth and absence, attention and indifference, creates emotional whiplash. The Machiavellian man understands this. He never gives everything at once. He never allows his energy to become predictable. When she shows affection, he acknowledges it subtly. A smile, a word, a glance. Then, just as her mind begins to relax, he retreats. Not with anger, not with drama, but with quiet distance. And her mind reacts instantly. She remembers the warmth she felt. She remembers the connection she craved. And now, the absence hits her harder than any loss she's known. This push and pull is psychological gravity. It teaches her mind that access to you is not guaranteed. Her brain starts tracking every action, analyzing every moment, searching for ways to regain the warmth she lost. And here's the secret. It's not about cruelty. It's about emotional calibration. By alternating presence and absence, attention and silence, you shape her emotional state. You make her feel alive. You make her obsessed with the unpredictability of your attention. But it must be done carefully. Too much absence and she disengages. Too much warmth and you lose tension. The art is in the balance. The right amount of warmth to captivate, the right amount of distance to haunt. She begins to chase without realizing it. She becomes invested in the rhythm you control. Every smile you withhold becomes a reward. Every glance you give becomes a prize. And her mind doesn't just remember the moments. It replays them endlessly, searching for clues, analyzing your behavior, wondering what she did to earn your favor, or what she might have lost. That's the addictive power of contrast. You don't need words. You don't need explanations. You just need timing and control. Because once her emotions begin to orbit your patterns, she's no longer chasing you consciously. She's chasing the emotional highs and lows only you can create. She becomes invested, attentive, and mentally engaged without you ever asking for it. And that, my friend, is the hidden trick almost no man understands. Contrast isn't manipulation. It's architecting desire at the deepest level. Most men stare at a woman's body. They admire what's visible, obvious, surface level. But the Machiavellian man never does. He watches behavior. He notices patterns, pauses, microshifts in tone, posture, and gaze. He sees when she's performing for others versus when she's herself. He tracks every small reaction, a flicker in her eyes, a hesitation in her speech, a subtle shift in energy, because attraction begins in the unspoken mind. It isn't built on compliments or gifts. It's built on perception. The feeling she can't name, the tension she can't explain, the pull she can't resist. You don't interrupt her thoughts with noise. You enter her mind silently. When she talks, you don't react impulsively. You absorb, you calibrate, you notice what others miss. And once you've mapped her psychology, once you've understood her emotional triggers without her realizing it, you speak, but only once. Not in flattery, not in chasing approval, but in truth she didn't want to see, delivered calmly, with precision. A single line, a subtle observation, a phrase that cuts through the mask she wears. You speak differently when you're around him. Or, I see the way you act when you think no one is watching. No judgment, no lecture, just observation. And her mind cannot forget it. It replays your words, comparing them against every interaction she has. It forces introspection. It triggers obsession, because she realizes, consciously or not, that you see the system behind her mask. You're not another man chasing her. You are the one who watches, analyzes, and waits for the moment to act. This is power. Quiet, invisible, psychological dominance that leaves echoes long after you've walked away. And here's the trick most men miss. You never explain. You never justify. You never plead for her attention. You simply exist in ways she cannot ignore. You become the unseen gravity that shapes her emotional universe. Presence is the signal. Silence is the weapon. Observation is the path. Once she feels this, you no longer need to compete with other men. Other men are irrelevant. She orbits your energy without even realizing she's doing it. And that is how a man becomes unforgettable. Not by chasing, not by entertaining, not by charming, but by seeing, waiting, and acting only when it matters. Availability is a trap, creates predictability, and predictability is the killer of desire. Most men think that showing up constantly proves worth. They send messages immediately, reply to every text, appear whenever asked. And yet, despite all this effort, she drifts. She forgets. She takes it for granted. Because value isn't measured by presence. It's measured by loss. The Machiavellian man understands this better than anyone. He doesn't punish. He doesn't argue. He doesn't lecture. He simply disappears. Not out of anger. Not to manipulate, but to create space. And in that space, something magical happens. Her mind becomes louder than her words. Her imagination starts filling the void. Every glance, every touch, every conversation you shared replays, amplified. She begins questioning herself. Did I push too far? Did I take him for granted? What is he thinking now? The absence becomes a mirror. She sees herself more clearly than you ever could. And she begins chasing, not for attention, but for emotional resolution. Timing is everything. Presence without power is meaningless. Absence without significance is ignored. You disappear when your value is undeniable. You vanish after she's invested, after she's attached, after she's aware of what she stands to lose. And only then does your absence burn like fire in her mind. Because the human brain cannot resist unfinished business, cannot resist loss that feels real. And once she senses the potential of losing you, she becomes mentally, emotionally, even physically attuned to your return. You see, this is not cruelty. It's not manipulation. It's psychological gravity. You are no longer just a man she enjoys. You are the void she can't ignore. You are the tension that keeps her awake. You are the one she subconsciously tries to understand, even when she convinces herself she isn't interested. And here's the final secret. The more controlled your absence, the more she internalizes your presence. She remembers not the minutes you were gone, but the moments that defined your existence in her mind. This is why women think about men who vanish without explanation. Not because of what they said, not because of what they gave, but because their absence left a gap her mind could not fill. Once you master this, you no longer chase attention. You no longer seek approval. You create pull without pushing, magnetism without effort, presence without being present. Most men confuse generosity with influence. They shower attention, affection, compliments, and gifts. And yet, the effect is fleeting. The Machiavellian man knows a truth most men never see. Value isn't in giving, it's in timing. The law is simple. Punish quickly, reward slowly. When she crosses a boundary, disrespects your space, or takes your attention for granted, you act immediately. Not with anger, not with words, not with drama. You withdraw. You disappear. You create a void. Her mind reacts instantly. She feels the absence. She feels the loss. And the sudden emptiness triggers reflection, guilt, and craving. But the reward, the warmth, the acknowledgement, the attention, comes slowly, deliberately, and unpredictably. A subtle smile, a word of praise, a fleeting touch, nothing too obvious, nothing that saturates her mind completely, just enough to make her want more, to make her chase the feeling without knowing why. This is not trickery. This is psychological conditioning. Her mind starts associating your presence with rare, high-value emotion. And because her desire is now calibrated, she begins investing effort to regain it, unconsciously matching your rhythm. Too many men reverse the formula. They punish often, emotionally, and inconsistently. They reward too quickly, too generously. They over-explain, overgive, overstay. The result? Predictability, loss of intrigue, forgettability. The Machiavellian approach is surgical. One swift withdrawal for every boundary crossed, one measured reward for every sign of respect or alignment. And her mind cannot resist this rhythm. She begins to anticipate. She begins to question. She begins to orbit your energy. Reward and punishment are not about cruelty. They are about discipline. Because humans, like gamblers at a casino, respond to uncertain outcomes. Pleasure given slowly becomes addictive. Loss delivered sharply becomes unforgettable. And when combined with absence, observation, and emotional contrast, this cycle creates psychological dependence. She doesn't realize she's been trained. She doesn't realize the obsession isn't about you at all. It's about the pattern you created in her mind, the rhythm of attention, withdrawal, and reward that she now craves. Once mastered, you no longer have to chase. She chases you. She notices everything. She analyzes everything. She remembers everything. And most importantly, she can't stop thinking about the man who moves at his own tempo, the man whose presence is rare and whose absence is devastating. Every woman tests a man, not to hurt him, not to trap him, but to see if he breaks. She shifts her tone. She pulls away. She acts cold, then warm. She contradicts herself, and she watches. Most men panic. They apologize, they explain, they chase. And in doing so, they reveal their predictability, their neediness, their weakness. Their power dissolves in front of her eyes. The Machiavellian man knows the ancient blueprint. Be both the lion and the fox. The lion represents strength. He is unshakable. He does not chase. He sets boundaries, and he enforces them silently. The fox represents cunning. He is intelligent, observant, patient. He does not react to bait. He calculates. He waits. He strikes only when the moment is precise. If you are only the lion, she will provoke you, and when you explode, you appear unstable. Your strength becomes noise. If you are only the fox, clever and calm, she may admire your intelligence, but she will not trust you to lead. Without the fire of boundaries, she cannot respect you. But when you are both, the effect is magnetic. She doesn't know what to expect. She cannot predict your reactions. She feels the tension between strength and mystery, and that tension is addictive. When she is emotional, be the fox. Observe, analyze, absorb, do not react. When she crosses a line, be the lion. Not with anger, not with noise. Simply stand your ground. A calm, unwavering presence that says, "This is my boundary, and I will not move." This duality, strength in stillness, calculation in silence, creates psychological friction, captivates her mind. It demands her attention. It makes her obsessed without her realizing why. And the most powerful part? She doesn't resent it. She doesn't feel manipulated. She feels drawn, compelled, curious, because humans are wired to respect control wrapped in intelligence. She can feel your gravity, even if she cannot name it. The lion protects your respect. The fox protects your mind. Together, they make you unforgettable. When you master both, she doesn't just notice you. She analyzes, admires, and obsesses over every subtle choice you make. And that, more than anything else, is the Machiavellian edge. Machiavelli's oldest law of power was simple: divide and conquer. Not empires, not armies, but the human mind. Most men try to control by force. They argue, convince, explain, or validate. They think certainty is the key to influence. But the Machiavellian man knows the opposite. Certainty breeds complacency, kills curiosity. It removes tension, and tension is what drives obsession. Instead, he plants tiny seeds of doubt, a suggestion, a subtle contradiction, a question that lingers unspoken. She says, "I hate jealous men." You smile lightly, calm, almost playful, and say nothing, or respond in a way that doesn't confirm or deny. And just like that, a crack forms. Her mind begins spinning. Did he mean that? Do I really feel that way? Why did that stay in my head? This is psychological division. Not between you and her, but inside her. Part of her trusts herself. Part of her starts to question. She loses control of the narrative. And you, unseen, are now the invisible force shaping her thoughts. The trick is subtlety. No one likes being overtly controlled. No one responds to pressure. But the human mind cannot resist unresolved tension. You create curiosity, conflict, and mental engagement. She begins thinking about you even when you're silent. She debates your intentions internally. She analyzes every glance, every word, every pause. And here's the beauty. You never force control. You never dominate loudly. You simply exist as the variable she cannot predict, the anomaly in her otherwise stable world. That is Machiavellian seduction at its finest. Not through dominance, not through charm, but through subtle, surgical influence. She doesn't realize she's obsessed. She doesn't realize you didn't chase. She only knows that your presence or absence shifts her world in ways she cannot resist. And once she starts orbiting your psychological tension, her mind becomes your playground without ever needing permission. Most men are distracted by beauty. They notice curves, smiles, outfits, surface-level traits. But the Machiavellian man watches behavior. He observes how she speaks around men she respects versus men she controls. How her energy shifts when someone challenges her. The subtle gestures, micro-expressions, pauses, and inflections others overlook. Because attraction isn't built on flattery. It's built on psychological resonance. Once you notice the patterns, you wait. You don't react impulsively. You don't speak until the precise moment arrives. Then, with calm precision, you drop a single line. Not a compliment, not a joke, not a chase. Something that pierces her self-perception. You speak differently when he's around. Your smile hides more than you think. I see the way you act when no one's watching. Delivered without emotion, without judgment, without expectation. Just truth she isn't ready to face. And her mind cannot forget it. She replays it endlessly, analyzing, questioning, recalibrating herself. She doesn't feel admired. She feels exposed. Not by force, not by pressure, by presence. By the quiet observation that no one else bothered to do. You've entered her psychology without her permission. And once she realizes it, she begins thinking of you constantly. Even when you're absent, she will wonder, how did he notice that? Was I that obvious? Has he been watching all along? And this is why one single line, delivered with perfect timing, can be more powerful than weeks of chasing, begging, or flattery. It's not charm. It's not manipulation. It's precision. It's psychological dominance wrapped in silence. The Machiavellian man doesn't entertain. He doesn't explain. He observes, waits, and strikes only when it counts. Because humans remember moments of truth far more than moments of praise. She will forget jokes, gifts, compliments. But she will never forget the man who saw her mask and named it, not to shame her, but to show that he sees what no one else does. And from that moment you live in her mind. Even if she never speaks to you again. Even if she convinces herself she isn't interested. You've become the ghost of unfinished meaning. A force she cannot ignore. A presence she cannot predict. And a man she can never forget. Most men exist in a woman's life temporarily. They are pleasant, amusing, or comforting. She enjoys their presence, but nothing truly changes. The Machiavellian man doesn't settle for pleasant. He reshapes her internal narrative. You are not just another guy she dated. You are the moment her story shifted. The first man who refused to chase, the first who held standards and walked away, the first who made her question herself, her choices, and her assumptions. This is not cruelty. This is impact. This is psychological gravity. You give her glimpses of your mind and presence. You show her the truth of her own patterns. You challenge her without pressure. You disturb the predictable rhythm of her life. And then you vanish. Not angry, not bitter, just gone. But in her mind you remain. Because she cannot undo the shift you created. She remembers not your words, but the emotional imprint. The way she felt, the way her assumptions were challenged, the way her own world shifted. She might laugh. She might move on. She might convince herself she forgot you. But deep down, she remembers the version of herself that was awakened by you. The woman who saw her own reflection through your presence. The woman who felt tension, curiosity, obsession, without knowing why. This is the ultimate power of Machiavellian psychology. You do not compete for attention. You reshape the landscape of desire. You leave her orbiting your influence even in absence. You become the chapter she cannot rewrite, the turning point she cannot forget. Control begins here. This is not about chasing, performing, or pleasing. It's about precision, timing, and psychological architecture. It's about presence, absence, contrast, observation, and one-line truths that leave her mind spinning. You do not entertain her. You do not seek approval. You command gravity. And once you master this, she doesn't chase you consciously. She chases the shift you created within her. The one man who never begged, never explained, and never flinched. These are not tricks. They are psychological structures built to press deep, hidden switches in her mind. Switches that turn attraction into obsession. Most men are addicted to approval. They joke, they chase, they perform. You, however, are building gravity, not performing validation. Say the one thing that cuts through her defenses. Leave it there. Create silence. Create mystery. Create a space in her mind that no one else can fill. If something inside you shifted while listening, if a deeper instinct awoke, this is your signal. You are done playing the game like everyone else. You are ready to build presence, control, and influence without asking for love, attention, or approval. If this message resonates, type worship in the comments. One word, no explanation. Because this isn't about chasing attention, seeking approval, or performing for her. It's about creating presence that she cannot ignore, influence she cannot resist, and a place in her mind that no one else can fill. Subscribe now and prepare to learn how to move through the game of attraction not as a follower, not as a beggar of love, but as the man who sets the rules and becomes the one she cannot stop thinking about.